Thanks everyone for coming. I won't steal the stage because that's their stage and there's a lot of them. I think what Dan was asking was just a little bit of context and a little bit of a sort of giving you a sense of the scale of the importance of what the fellowship is doing and the job that you guys are doing. So just in a sense, this is all praises basically. I'm just praising you. Praises and praises and praises. But you might or not have come across things like city networks and partnerships of cities and multi-city programs. But if you go to any hall, not even any, almost every side event that you can find here, you will find things like the C40 Climate Leadership Group, Rockefeller 100, Resilient Cities, ICLEI, UCLG. There's lots of this sort of creatures. Now, the size and scale of international cooperation and international endeavors of cities is humongous. There's easily, it's even hard to account for, but it's easily accounted for 250, maybe 300 formal networks of cities at the moment that are doing things, anything. You see a lot on environment, but in fact the whole spectrum of the SDGs is pretty decently covered. Anything from resilience to humanitarianism to gender to culture and so forth. Now, it isn't just that these things are popular because there's events. These things are popular because they're doing a lot of things. Globally, city networks, more than half of city networks produce joint policies between cities. That means that folks in Sao Paulo might be asked to work with folks in Paris and folks in Toronto at the same time to work on a new scheme for bus rapid transport. That means, for instance, we've just finished a piece of work with the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. We looked at 27 global cities. The majority of these places had a clear demand for capacity building, for external engagement. The majority, the nearly totality of these places engage with networks. They participate in these things to reach out to other cities. The size of cities involved in city diplomacy at the best landscape that we've done thus far, so accounting for 250 city networks globally, is about 11,000 cities. So this is not a story of people that work in London or Sydney. It is a story of people that work in places that you might have unlikely heard things from, like Peterborough in the United Kingdom or Turin in Italy and so forth. It isn't just the big cities. In fact, quite interestingly, recently McKinsey Global Institute said if you really have to put your money in urbanization and cities, put it on the middle-sized cities. The reason is that's where the majority of the growth and the challenges is sitting at the moment. Now, I think a critical part of having a fellowship, looking on capacity building and connecting people, is that need for sort of a slightly different generation. Typically, doing international things for cities was either about joining a campaign, signing up to a manifesto or a joint agreement, or doing twinnings, finding some sister cities, which is still really relevant. But the majority of city diplomacy, city networking activity involves multiple cities from multiple countries of very different realities. And quite interestingly, a piece of work that we've done in London, in fact in Melbourne at the moment, we worked with about 250 experts on urban policy internationally. And we got all sorts of things interesting about how they engage internationally. But there was one key piece of data in there that is really telling. If you have to split all those people, the best way to split is by generation. If you look at the generational points of reference, 18 to 35 refers to a completely different landscape of cities than 35, which makes some of us a bit older, to 60. The 35 to 60 bracket tends to refer to London, to New York, etc., as I've just done, giving away my age. The 18 to 35 bracket refers to Singapore, refers to Dubai, refers to middle-sized cities, refers, really interesting, lots of mentions, for instance, to Chiang Mai rather than Bangkok. The spatial, the imaginary of what global cities are, what the global city reality and connection is in the sort of the younger bracket of urban practitioners is changing fast, is demanding much more international connections and capacity to relate to each other, so speaking languages, coming up with joint projects relating to each other. That programs like, oh God, I didn't expect that was me. I assumed it was the fellowship. Anyway, programs like the fellowship become fundamental, and they become fundamental because they're not just about capacity building, but they're about doing it in a networked way, getting you guys next to each other, talking to each other, and exchanging experience and so on. And the critical thing there is you might not all be in the same place or the same city or the same job in the near future. And the mobility element there is fundamental because you remain rooted to a place where you have a cohort of international colleagues, international champions in a sense. That really changes a lot. And we've seen quite a lot of people, for instance, doing exactly that, going from an advisory role or a civil society role in Sydney to a government role in Jakarta to a lending and coordination role at the World Bank. And it is really where these type of things make a massive difference. So in general, this is just me commending the initiative. The critical thing is that lots of these initiatives at the moment tend to forget the global local connection and the fact that you guys have feet on the ground, think about your everyday urban challenges that you see, but it is explicitly connected to the SDGs. It tries to put things on the ground and scale them internationally. That's exactly the type of project and programs that we desperately need, whether we look just at the UN Habitat and Habitat 3 and urban agenda landscape, or it's a broader conversation about the UN reform and program for 2030. So big kudos for the program, more, and I actually just look forward to listening to stories and things and taking notes. But thanks everyone.
Thank you for Michele for your kind words. And as Michele said, the purpose of this program is about localizing the SDG, getting implementation on the ground. And now we have 8 of our fellows to talk about their journey with the local public fellowship and what they have been doing on the ground. First, we have Clinton from Melbourne.